My name is Wayne and I am from Ghana. There are moments in history when heaven pauses everything just to send a warning. March 4th, 5th, and 6th are not ordinary dates. In the spiritual realm, timings matter, strategies are set, plans are formed, movements are initiated. But hear this clearly: God never allows a battle to start without first giving his children an opportunity to prepare. Something huge is coming, and when heaven repeats a message, it is not for entertainment, it is for preparation. In the spiritual world, certain windows open. Those who once operated in darkness have testified that coordinated spiritual activities often align with specific dates. But here is the powerful truth: the enemy may plan, but he does not control outcomes. God is sovereign, God is supreme, and God always speaks before events unfold. These next days are about alignment. If there has been unusual pressure, strange dreams, sudden fear, unexplained heaviness, or intense spiritual attacks, that is not random, it is resistance. And resistance appears when something significant is about to break through. March 4th, 5th, and 6th mark a turning point. For some, it will be exposure. Hidden things will come to light. For others, it will be deliverance. Long-standing battles will suddenly lose their grip. And for many, it will be acceleration. Doors that were delayed will begin to open rapidly, but there is an instruction attached to this warning. Do not panic. Do not entertain fear. Do not speak negatively. Fear feeds darkness. Faith starves it. The spiritual realm responds to authorization. What you permit through fear becomes empowered. What you cancel through faith becomes dismantled. God wants you alert, not anxious, prepared, not passive. These 3 days are crucial for prayer and declaration. When you pray, you interrupt plans formed in secret. When you declare God's promises, you enforce heaven's authority over your household. If there were meetings in darkness, let there be louder declarations in the light. You are not helpless. You are not exposed. You are not alone. There is a mark of divine ownership over your life. Many times something huge is not destruction. It is transition. It is the breaking of an old cycle. It is the closing of a season of delay. It is the collapse of a hidden resistance that has been slowing your progress. Sometimes the shaking is not to destroy you, it is to dislodge what has been attached to you. March 4th, 5th, and the 6th of May bring shifts. You may notice sudden clarity. You may receive unexpected news. You may feel spiritual intensity. But remember, intensity does not mean defeat. It often means movement. Before promotion, there is pressure. Before breakthrough, there is confrontation. Before light expands, darkness attempts resistance. But resistance always loses against divine authority. Use these days intentionally. Pray over your home. Speak blessings over your family. Anoint your environment with faith-filled words. Reject every negative report. Cancel every premature death. Declare peace over your household. God is not warning you to scare you. He is warning you to position you. When God says, hear this, it means He is giving you advantage. Something huge is coming. For some, it will be justice. For some, it will be restoration. For some, it will be a divine announcement that shifts everything. Stay spiritually awake. Guard your atmosphere. Protect your peace. Strengthen your faith. And remember, no plan formed in darkness can override a life surrendered to God. March 4th, 5th, and 6th are not dates to fear, they are dates to stand. Because when heaven announces something huge, it is never to destroy the faithful, it is to establish them. Prepare, pray, declare, and watch what God does. The spiritual realm is real and active, whether people acknowledge it or not. Just because something cannot be seen with physical eyes does not mean it does not exist. There are forces, movements, influences, and operations that function beyond human sight, yet they affect human experiences every single day. Just as wind cannot be seen, but its effects are undeniable. The spiritual realm operates invisibly, but produces visible results. Many dismiss what they cannot measure, but spiritual realities do not depend on human validation to function. They were established long before humanity began to question them. There is a dimension that overlaps with the physical world, a realm where decisions are influenced, destinies are contested, and battles are initiated long before they manifest outwardly. People often focus only on what happens externally, unaware that most physical events have spiritual roots. Sudden conflicts, unexpected setbacks, unexplained favor, unusual resistance, and divine acceleration often begin in unseen places. What appears random in the natural frequently has intention in the spiritual. What looks coincidental may, in fact, be co-animated. Those who once operated in darkness have admitted that spiritual monitoring is real. Destinies are observed. Patterns are studied. Weaknesses are targeted. But there is another side that is even more powerful. There is divine protection, angelic assignment, and heavenly authorization that operates with far greater authority. The spiritual realm is not controlled by darkness. It is governed by God. Nothing moves without permission. Nothing operates outside divine awareness. Even when negative forces attempt interference, they remain limited and restricted. The reality of the spiritual realm explains why two people can be in the same environment yet experience completely different outcomes. It explains why some individuals rise against impossible odds while others struggle despite visible advantages. It explains why prayer changes atmospheres and why faith shifts circumstances. When a person prays, something moves beyond what is visible. When someone declares truth with conviction, there is a reaction in the unseen. Words are not empty, they carry spiritual weight. Belief is not passive, it activates response. Spiritual laws function just as consistently as physical laws, just as gravity operates whether one believes in it or not. Spiritual principles operate regardless of awareness. Alignment produces protection. Disobedience opens doors. Fear invites oppression. Faith enforces authority. These are not abstract ideas. They are operational realities. Many people unknowingly authorize negativity through constant doubt, destructive speech, and sustained fear. Others unknowingly activate divine covering through gratitude, obedience, and trust. Activity in the spiritual realm increases during significant moments. Certain seasons carry heightened intensity. Breakthrough seasons often attract resistance because movement threatens stagnation. When a person is close to elevation, distractions increase. When purpose begins to awaken, opposition attempts to suppress it. This is not coincidence, it is reaction. Darkness reacts when light begins to expand. But reaction does not equal victory. Noise does not equal power. Opposition does not equal defeat. The spiritual realm is structured. There is order. There is rank. There is assignment. Just as organizations in the natural world have systems and chains of authority, the unseen realm operates with precision. Nothing is random, nothing is careless, even chaos has coordination behavior in it. Yet above all structure stands divine sovereignty. God's authority supersedes every other force. His power overrides every lesser operation. What he permits has purpose. What he blocks has reason. Awareness of the spiritual realm does not require paranoia. It requires wisdom. Being spiritually aware means recognizing that life is more than material existence. It means understanding that discipline, prayer, integrity, and faith are not merely religious acts but strategic positioning. It means guarding thoughts because thoughts influence speech and speech carries authority. It means protecting atmosphere because environments can either empower peace or magnify confusion. There are moments when people sense heaviness without explanation, times when tension increases without visible cause, seasons when clarity suddenly replaces confusion. These shifts often reflect unseen movement. Just as weather changes before storms become visible, spiritual, climates shift before events unfold. Sensitivity to these changes is not superstition, it is discernment. Discernment recognizes patterns. Discernment detects timing. Discernment responds rather than reacts. Ignoring the spiritual realm does not neutralize it. Denial does not dismantle activity. Awareness, however, empowers preparation. When someone understands that battles may originate beyond the visible, they respond differently. Instead of panicking at every challenge, they pray. Instead of surrendering to fear, they declare truth. Instead of assuming coincidence, they seek clarity. This posture changes outcomes. The unseen realm is not distant, it is intertwined with daily living. Decisions echo beyond the moment. Actions create openings or closures. Alliances establish covering. What a person aligns with determines what influences them. Alignment with darkness creates vulnerability. Alignment with God establishes security. No one exists spiritually neutral. Every choice positions a person somewhere. Light is stronger than darkness. Not because darkness is inactive, but because light carries original authority. Darkness reacts. Light initiates. Darkness imitates. Light creates. When someone walks in faith, they are not pretending danger does not exist. They are standing in greater authority than the danger. Confidence rooted in God is not ignorance, it is informed trust. The spiritual realm remains active at all times. Movements occur beyond human awareness. Yet those who are aligned with God do not need to live in fear of unseen forces. Awareness should produce discipline, not anxiety. It should inspire prayer, not panic. It should encourage righteousness, not superstition. Understanding that the spiritual realm is real changes how one speaks, thinks, chooses, and responds. It shifts perspective from surface level reactions to deeper discernment. It transforms ordinary living into intentional alignment with higher authority. Certain dates carry spiritual significance, whether people recognize it or not. Time is not just a human invention measured by clocks and calendars. It is a system established by God. Days, seasons, and cycles were created with purpose. From the very beginning, time was structured, ordered, and given meaning. That means not every day carries the same weight spiritually. Some moments mark transitions, some mark judgments, some mark releases, some mark divine visitations. There are days when heaven moves in unusual ways and days when spiritual resistance intensifies because something significant is scheduled to happen. Throughout history, major spiritual events have often aligned with specific times. Battles were fought on appointed days. Deliverances happened at set moments. Sudden reversals occurred when a certain date arrived, even in the natural world. D. We understand the power of timing. Seeds planted in the wrong season struggle. Actions taken at the wrong moment fail. But when something is aligned with its appointed time, it flows with greater ease. In the same way, the spiritual realm responds to timing. Those who once operated in darkness have admitted that certain days are strategically chosen for coordinated activity. Plans are not random. Decisions are not spontaneous. There are calendars in the unseen realm, just as there are calendars in the physical world. Patterns are followed. Cycles are observed. Windows are identified. When people are unaware of this, they can be caught off guard. But awareness shifts response. Awareness turns reaction into preparation. This does not mean every specific date should cause fear. Fear is never the correct response. The purpose of understanding spiritual timing is not anxiety but alignment. When a person knows that some days carry heightened activity, they become intentional, they pray more deliberately, they guard their words more carefully, they pay attention to their environment, they refuse to speak negativity, they strengthen their spiritual discipline. There are times when unusual pressure increases as a certain date approaches. Tension may rise without visible reason. Conflicts may appear suddenly. Discouragement may intensify. This is often because something significant is nearing manifestation. Resistance increases before breakthrough. Pressure intensifies before release. Darkness attempts interference when it senses movement in someone's destiny. But interference does not mean control. It only reveals reaction. Certain dates become turning points. A long season of delay can end abruptly when its appointed time arrives. A cycle of stagnation can break suddenly when the spiritual window shifts. What felt immovable for years can collapse in a single day because its time has expired. Timing determines when doors open and when doors close. When God declares a season finished, no force can extend it. When God declares a new chapter begun, no opposition can prevent it. There are also moments of exposure that align with specific times. Hidden matters surface, secrets unravel, truth emerges. What was concealed becomes visible. This often happens because a spiritual deadline has been reached. Nothing hidden remains hidden forever. Time eventually reveals what was buried. Certain dates function like divine appointments where unresolved matters are addressed. Understanding spiritual significance in dates also requires balance. Not every inconvenience is a spiritual attack. Not every challenge is tied to a specific calendar day. Discernment is essential. Discernment distinguishes between coincidence and coordination. It senses when something feels heavier than normal. It recognizes when patterns repeat around similar times, each year. It observes cycles rather than isolated events. There are seasons when blessing intensifies as well. Just as resistance can increase during certain windows, favor can also accelerate, opportunities can appear rapidly, long awaited answers can arrive unexpectedly. Restoration can happen faster than anticipated. These positive shifts are often connected to spiritual timing. When preparation meets appointed time, manifestation becomes feasible. People sometimes look back at their lives and notice that major events occurred around similar periods. Promotions, relocations, relationships, separations, breakthroughs, and even spiritual awakenings often align with particular months or recurring dates. This is not accidental. Life unfolds within a structured timeline. Destinies move through phases. Cycles close and new ones begin according to divine order. Being aware of spiritually significant dates encourage intentional living. It calls for preparation instead of passivity. It invites reflection instead of distraction. It motivates prayer instead of panic. When someone senses that a date may carry weight, they can respond by strengthening their faith. They can declare protection over their household. They can reject fear and choose confidence. They can position themselves spiritually rather than drift carelessly. Darkness may attempt coordination on certain days, but it remains limited. No date carries greater authority than God Himself. The creator of time is not subject to time. He stands outside of it, governing every second. That means even when certain days hold spiritual intensity, divine sovereignty remains supreme. Nothing surprises him. Nothing outruns his awareness. Nothing overrides his permission. Certain dates act as crossroads. They separate old seasons from new ones. They mark endings and beginnings. They serve as spiritual checkpoints where movement becomes visible. Some bring confrontation. Some bring confirmation. Some bring celebration. But all operate under higher authority. Recognizing that certain dates carry spiritual significance shifts perspective. It transforms how one approaches time. Days are no longer random squares on a calendar. They become opportunities for alignment. They become reminders that life is unfolding according to a greater structure. They reveal that behind visible events, invisible timing is at work. They remind us that nothing is merely accidental and nothing unfolds without purpose within the divine order of time. Fear is a doorway. It is not just an emotion that passes through the mind. It is an entry point that allows influence, distortion, and limitation to step into a person's life. Fear rarely announces itself loudly at first. It often begins as a whisper, a subtle thought, a small doubt, a cue, or yet question that plants uncertainty. But when that whisper is entertained, it grows. When it is repeated, it strengthens. When it is believed, it opens access. Fear changes perception before it changes circumstances. It alters how situations are interpreted. A delay begins to look threatening. A delay begins to feel permanent. A challenge begins to appear impossible. Fear magnifies obstacles and minimizes solutions. It exaggerates risk and silences faith. Over time, it conditions the mind to expect negative outcomes, and expectation shapes behavior. In the spiritual dimension, fear functions as authorization. Just as faith activates confidence and alignment with divine promises, Fear activates agreement with worst case scenarios. What a person consistently fears can begin to influence their decisions. Those decisions then shape outcomes. Fear convinces someone to withdraw when they should advance. It persuades silence when they should speak. It encourages surrender when they should stand firm. Fear also affects the body. It triggers stress responses, increases tension, disrupts sleep, and weakens focus. Prolonged fear creates patterns of anxiety that impact physical health, but its deeper impact is internal. It erodes trust. It fractures peace. It disturbs clarity. A fearful mind struggles to discern truth accurately because it filters information through alarm. Many times, fear does not enter through dramatic events. It enters through repeated exposure to negativity, constantly hearing discouraging reports, engaging in conversations filled with doubt, and dwelling on past failures gradually build a fearful mindset. The mind becomes trained to anticipate harm. Once that expectation is established, even minor inconveniences reinforce it. Fear isolates. It convinces individuals that they are alone in their struggle. It persuades them that no one understands. DS isolation strengthens its hold because it prevents corrective perspective. In isolation, fearful thoughts echo without challenge. But when brought into the light through prayer, counsel, or honest conversation, fear begins to lose its grip. One of fear's greatest tactics is projection. It pulls the mind into the future and paints negative pictures of events that have not happened. It creates imagined disasters and rehearses them repeatedly. The body reacts as if those scenarios are already real. Energy is drained responding to possibilities instead of realities. This constant anticipation of danger prevents enjoyment of the present. Fear also attaches itself to past experiences. A previous disappointment becomes evidence that future attempts will fail. A betrayal becomes proof that trust is unsafe. A mistake becomes confirmation of incompetence. In this way, fear builds strongholds from memory. It transforms lessons into limitations instead of growth. In spiritual terms, fear distorts identity. It causes a person to forget who they are and whose authority they stand under. Confidence rooted in faith recognizes divine covering and purpose. Fear, however, narrows vision until challenges appear larger than promises. It replaces assurance with uncertainty. It shifts focus from possibility to threat. Yet fear only maintains power when it is accepted as truth. It cannot force agreement. It must be believed to operate fully. The moment a person questions fearful thoughts and confronts them with truth, the doorway begins to close. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate action. Faith does not deny challenges, it refuses to bow to them. When someone consistently feeds faith through prayer, gratitude, reflection on promises, and disciplined thinking, fear loses territory. The mind becomes guarded. Thoughts are evaluated rather than automatically embraced. Negative projections are interrupted. Confidence grows through practice. Fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It claims to be caution while caution protects. Fear paralyzes. Caution evaluates risk and proceeds wisely. Fear exaggerates risk and refuses to move. Discernment is needed to distinguish between the two. Healthy awareness keeps someone safe. Fear keeps them stuck. The doorway of fear can also affect environments. A household dominated by anxiety feels heavy, conversations become tense, decisions are delayed, creativity diminishes. In contrast, an atmosphere grounded in faith feels lighter, clearer, and more stable. Peace invites productivity. Confidence encourages initiative. Breaking fear requires intentional replacement. It is not enough to tell someone not to be afraid. Fear must be displaced by truth, strengthened by repetition, and reinforced by action. Small steps of courage weaken its hold. Each time someone acts despite fear, its authority shrinks. Each time a fearful thought is rejected, mental strength increases. Fear may knock, but it does not have to be welcomed. It may whisper, but it does not have to be believed. It may attempt to enter, but it requires agreement to remain. Recognizing fear as a doorway shifts responsibility back to the individual. It reveals that while external events may trigger reactions, internal agreement determines influence. When faith becomes stronger than imagination, when truth becomes louder than doubt, and when trust overrides uncertainty, the doorway that once stood open begins to close. Your words authorize outcomes, whether you realize it or not. Speech is not merely a communication tool, it is a force that shapes perception and establishes agreements. Long before actions manifest physically, they are often formed verbally. Words frame beliefs and beliefs guide behavior. When something is spoken repeatedly, it begins to carve pathways in the mind. Those pathways influence decisions, and decisions create results. Every word carries weight. Some words build while others dismantle. Some open doors while others close them. When a person constantly speaks defeat, limitation, and hopelessness, those declarations gradually construct an internal environment where failure feels inevitable. On the other hand, when someone consistently speaks life, possibility, and confidence, they reinforce resilience and expectation. Expectation influences posture. Posture influences movement. What you consistently say, you begin to align with. If you declare that nothing ever works out for you, your mind unconsciously searches for evidence to support that claim. Confirmation bias strengthens the narrative. Soon, even neutral events are interpreted as proof of the negative statement. In this way, words do not simply describe reality, they participate in shaping it. In the spiritual dimension, words function as authorization. They signal what you permit and what you reject. Complaining invites discouragement to stay. Gratitude invites peace to grow. Fearful declarations amplify anxiety. Faith-filled declarations cultivate courage. The atmosphere around a person often mirrors the tone of their speech. A home filled with constant negativity feels tense and heavy. A space filled with encouragement feels energized and hopeful. Words also influence relationships. Harsh, careless language damages trust and creates distance. Affirming respectful communication strengthens bonds and builds security. A child repeatedly told they are incapable may internalize that belief for years. A child consistently reminded of their potential may develop confidence that carries them through adversity. The same principle applies to adults. People back own environments shaped by repeated speech directed toward them. Your words shape your identity. When you introduce yourself as inadequate, unlucky, or overlooked, you reinforce a diminished self concept. When you speak of growth learning and resilience, you construct a stronger internal framework. Identity influences choices. Choices influence destiny. What begins as a sentence can eventually become a pattern. Speech also affects emotional regulation. Negative self-talk intensifies stress. Catastrophic language amplifies minor problems into overwhelming crises. Saying this always goes wrong, or I can't handle this escalates internal pressure. Reframing language to this is challenging, but I will navigate it, creates space for calm problem solving. The mind responds differently to possibility than to hopelessness. There is power in repetition. Words spoken once may have limited impact, but words spoken daily establish strongholds. Repeated complaints anchor discouragement. Repeated declarations of purpose anchor determination. Over time, the brain wires itself around frequently spoken phrases. Neural pathways strengthen according to usage. In this way, speech physically reshapes thinking patterns. Words also influence action. If someone continually says they are tired, unmotivated, and incapable, their behavior aligns with those declarations. Energy drops, initiative fades. But when someone speaks strength and readiness, the body often follows. Language primes performance. Athletes, leaders, and performers understand this principle. They rehearse empowering statements because they recognize that words influence execution. Silence can authorize outcomes as well. Failing to speak up against negativity can allow it to continue unchecked. Not correcting false narratives about yourself may permit them to spread internally. Choosing silence when affirmation is near edited can create emotional distance. Words withheld can be as impactful as words spoken. Guarding speech requires awareness. Many negative phrases slip out casually without consideration. I'm just unlucky. Nothing ever changes. This is impossible. These statements seem harmless in the moment, but repetition turns them into agreements. Discipline in speech begins with pausing before speaking. It involves evaluating whether words align with truth or exaggeration. Positive speech is not denial of reality. It is framing reality with perspective. It acknowledges challenges without surrendering to them. Saying this is difficult is honest. Saying this will destroy me is authorization. The first statement invites strategy. The second invites despair. Precision in language matters. The influence of words extends beyond the individual. Leaders shape organizations through tone. Parents shape families through conversation. Teachers shape classrooms through encouragement or criticism. Even internal dialogue shapes daily mood. Every spoken sentence contributes to an ongoing narrative. That narrative becomes the lens through which life is experienced. Changing outcomes often begins with changing vocabulary. Replacing defeatist language with constructive language alters mental posture. Shifting from I can't to I am learning transforms stagnation into growth. Moving from this will fail to I will give my best effort creates momentum. The shift may seem small, but compounded over time, it redirects direction. Words are seeds. Once planted, they grow. Some grow into confidence, peace, and success. Others grow into anxiety, resentment, and limitation. Choosing speech intentionally determines what takes root. Consistent, disciplined language becomes a foundation upon which decisions stand. Outcomes follow patterns of belief reinforced by repeated declaration. When speech aligns with truth, courage, and faith, it begins to authorize strength, clarity, and forward movement. Prayer disrupts evil timelines because it intervenes in patterns that would otherwise continue unchecked. A timeline is simply a sequence of events set in motion by decisions, influences, and spiritual agreements. When negative cycles repeat themselves, financial hardship from one generation to another, destructive habits that seem impossible to break, repeated relational failures, constant setbacks at the edge of progress, those patterns often feel scheduled as if life is following a script already written. Prayer steps into that script and rewrites direction. Many people live inside cycles they did not consciously choose. They inherit environments, mindsets, and consequences shaped long before they were born. These patterns can feel predetermined. When similar struggles repeat year after year, it creates the illusion of inevitability. But prayer challenges inevitability. It introduces divine interruption into what appears fixed. What was moving in a straight line suddenly encounters resistance from a higher authority. Evil timelines are not always dramatic or obvious. Sometimes there are subtle progressions, small compromises that accumulate over time, unhealthy thought, patterns that slowly deepen, relationships that gradually deteriorate. Left untouched, these patterns advance. They build momentum. Momentum creates predictability. Predictability reinforces expectation. Prayer breaks momentum. It introduces a new influence that was not previously part of the sequence. When someone prays intentionally, they are not merely expressing hope, they are aligning with divine authority. This alignment shifts perspective first. A person begins to see patterns clearly. Awareness replaces confusion. Clarity reveals entry points where change is possible. Without prayer, many patterns remain invisible. People respond to symptoms rather than causes. Prayer uncovers roots. Prayer also strengthens discernment. Discernment recognizes early warning, signs before full manifestation. Instead of waiting for crisis, prayer allows intervention at the seed stage. Addressing an issue at its beginning prevents escalation. In this way, prayer does not only solve problems, it prevents them from fully forming. It disrupts progression before damage multiplies. There are moments when individuals feel as if they are always one step away from breakthrough, yet never crossing into it. Something consistently interferes. Unexpected obstacles arise at critical points. Doors open briefly and then close. These recurring interruptions can create frustration and exhaustion. Prayer confronts these repeated barriers. It declares that cycles of near success without completion must end. It invites completion where delay once dominated. Prayer changes the internal timeline as well. Negative outcomes often begin with internal deterioration, hopelessness replacing vision, bitterness replacing compassion, fear replacing confidence. These shifts do not happen instantly, they develop gradually. If left unchallenged, they create emotional and spiritual decline. Prayer restores internal alignment. It recalibrates thinking. It renews strength. When the inner timeline changes, external outcomes begin to follow. Another way prayer disrupts harmful progression is by altering reaction. Many destructive timelines are fueled by predictable responses. Anger met with anger escalates conflict. Offense met with retaliation deepens division. Fear met with withdrawal reinforces isolation. Prayer interrupts automatic reaction. It creates space for wisdom instead of impulse. When response changes, the sequence shifts. A different reaction produces a different result. Prayer also dismantles agreements made unconsciously. Sometimes people accept limitations as permanent truths. They agree internally with statements like this: is just how my life is or no ever improves. These internal agreements solidify negative trajectories. Prayer challenges those beliefs. It replaces resignation with expectation. It breaks agreement with possibility. There is also a generational dimension. Families sometimes observe patterns that repeat across decades. Addictions, broken relationships, chronic instability. These patterns can feel embedded in identity. Prayer confronts inherited narratives. It declares that repetition does not equal destiny. It invites divine influence into family history, interrupting cycles that seemed unbreakable. Prayer is not passive, it is active engagement with higher authority. It is conversation that invites intervention. When someone prays consistently, they are positioning themselves within a different flow of influence. Instead of drifting along negative currents, they anchor themselves in divine direction. Anchoring prevents drift. Drift is what carries people unknowingly into harmful destinations. The disruption prayer creates is not always immediate or dramatic. Sometimes it begins quietly: a changed mindset, a new opportunity, a relationship restored, a habit weakened. Over time, these shifts compound, the trajectory alters. What once seemed certain becomes avoidable. What once felt unavoidable becomes dismantled. Prayer also strengthens resilience during disruption. Breaking a negative timeline may provoke resistance. Change often unsettles established patterns, but prayer sustains courage during transition. It reinforces confidence that interruption is necessary for transformation. Without disruption, harmful sequences continue unchallenged. Timelines represent direction. When someone consistently invites divine influence into their circumstances, they are refusing to accept destructive progression as final. They are declaring that no sequence of events is beyond alteration. They are choosing alignment over inevitability. In that choice, patterns weaken, cycles fracture, and new pathways begin forming where repetition once ruled. God warns before he moves because preparation is an expression of his mercy. Sudden events may appear unexpected to people, but heaven is never impulsive. Divine action is intentional, measured, and purposeful. When shifts are approaching, whether correction, elevation, exposure, or transition, there are often signals released beforehand. These signals are not meant to create fear, but awareness. They are invitations to align, adjust, and prepare for what is about to unfold. Throughout life, there are moments when an internal prompting becomes stronger than usual, a sense that something is changing, a conviction to pray more deeply, an urge to correct a behavior, a restlessness that disrupts comfort. These impressions are rarely random. They are gentle warnings that movement is near. Ignoring them can lead to shock. Responding to them leads to readiness. Warnings are not always dramatic announcements. Sometimes they arrive as repeated themes, a message heard multiple times, from different sources, a scripture that continues to surface, a dice that keeps appearing in conversations, patterns that demand attention. Repetition is often a signal. When something is repeated, it is being emphasized. When it is emphasized, it is important. God warns because he values cooperation. He does not force alignment, he invites it. Before a door closes, there is often a season of opportunity to walk through it. Before consequences unfold, there are chances to change direction. Before exposure happens, there are whispers to correct what is hidden. Warnings are opportunities disguised as alerts. They create space for voluntary adjustment instead of compulsory correction. Sometimes warnings feel uncomfortable. They disturb routines. They challenge habits. They confront denial. But discomfort does not mean harm. A warning that unsettles can protect from greater disruption later. Just as a weather alert encourages preparation before a storm, spiritual warnings encourage positioning before movement. Ignoring a forecast does not prevent the storm. It only increases vulnerability. Divine warnings can also precede blessing. Before promotion, there may be instruction to develop discipline. Before expansion, there may be guidance to strengthen character. Before acceleration, there may be correction of small compromises. Growth requires capacity. Warnings expand capacity. They refine readiness so that when increase arrives, it can be sustained rather than mishandled. Many people mistake warnings for obstacles. When tension increases or conviction intensifies, they assume something negative is approaching. In reality, movement often creates pressure. When seasons change, environments shift, adjustment is required. Warnings help navigate that adjustment. They prevent confusion by offering insight ahead of time. There are also warnings that protect from hidden danger. An unexplained hesitation, a delay that feels frustrating, a door that closes unexpectedly. At first, these moments may appear inconvenient. Later, they reveal protection. What felt like obstruction becomes evidence of guidance. Warnings sometimes manifest as prevention. Not every closed door is rejection. Some are rescue. God warns through conscience as well. A quiet awareness that something is not aligned. A persistent nudge to apologize, to forgive, to stop, to start. Conscience is a safeguard. Ignoring it dulls sensitivity. Honoring it sharpens discernment. The more someone responds to subtle warnings, the clearer they become. Sensitivity increases with obedience. Community can also carry warnings. Counsel from trusted voices often precedes significant change. When advice aligns consistently across different sources, it may be confirmation. Pride resists warning, humility receives it. Those who remain teachable are rarely blindsided because they remain attentive. Warnings are evidence of relationship. Indifference allows someone to walk blindly into consequence. Care intervenes beforehand. A loving parent warns before discipline. A wise leader warns before transition. In the same way, divine warnings reflect investment, not abandonment. They show involvement in the details of life. Sometimes warnings come long before movement, allowing time for reflection. Other times they are immediate, requiring quick response. Discernment determines the urgency. Delayed obedience can convert a gentle warning into a stronger correction. Immediate response can transform potential crisis into peaceful transition. Ignoring warnings does not cancel movement, it only changes how that movement is experienced. Prepared individuals experience change with stability. Unprepared individuals experience it with shock. The difference is not favoritism but attentiveness. Awareness reduces chaos. Warnings also reveal timing. They signal that a sea as soon is ending or beginning. They encourage evaluation. What must be released? What must be strengthened? What must be corrected? Reflection creates readiness. Readiness creates confidence. Confidence stabilizes transition. God's movements are never careless. They are deliberate shifts designed for purpose. Warnings are part of that design. They create opportunity for alignment before manifestation. They offer mercy before consequence. They extend invitation before action. Those who learn to recognize and respond to divine warnings discover that change rarely catches them unprepared because preparation was offered before movement ever began. Divine protection is a covenant, not a coincidence. A covenant is an established agreement, a binding promise rooted in commitment rather than emotion. It is not temporary and it is not dependent on circumstances. When protection is understood as covenantal, it shifts from being something hoped for occasionally to something anchored in relationship. It becomes a covering that flows from alignment, not luck. Protection in this sense is not merely the absence of danger. It is the presence of preservation. It is guidance away from unseen traps. It is strength in moments of pressure. It is restraint placed on forces that attempt to overstep boundaries. A covenant establishes limits. It defines what is permitted and what is restricted. When divine protection is active, not everything that forms is allowed to prosper. Not every plan against a person is allowed to advance unchecked. A covenant implies responsibility as well. Agreements function in two directions. While divine protection is rooted in God's faithfulness, alignment strengthens awareness of that covering. Alignment does not earn protection. It positions a person to walk confidently within it. When someone lives in harmony with truth, integrity, and faith, they become more sensitive to guidance. That sensitivity helps them avoid unnecessary harm. Divine protection often operates quietly. It prevents accidents that never become stories. It blocks opportunities that would have led to destruction. It redirects paths before danger becomes visible. Many times people only recognize protection in hindsight. A delayed trip that avoided tragedy, a rejected proposal that prevented long-term harm, a closed door that preserved peace. What felt like frustration reveals itself as preservation. Protection does not mean the absence of challenges. It means challenges do not have ultimate authority. There may be storms, but they do not destroy. There may be opposition, but it does not prevail. Covenant protection establishes boundaries around destiny. It ensures that purpose cannot be erased by temporary pressure even when adversity arises. It is limited in scope and duration. There is also a spiritual dimension to covenant protection. It involves defense against unseen influences that attempt to weaken, distract, or discourage. Thoughts that would normally overwhelm are restrained. Attacks that would escalate are reduced. Confusion that would dominate is interrupted by clarity. This does not always happen dramatically. Often it is subtle reinforcement, quiet strength, inner peace that defies circumstances. Covenant protection fosters confidence rather than fear. When someone understands they are covered by a promise, they do not live anxiously, scanning for threats. They remain alert but not paranoid. Fear diminishes because assurance increases. Confidence rooted in covenant is different from arrogance. It is not self-reliance. It is trust in divine faithfulness. Protection also extends beyond the individual. It can rest upon households, families, and generations. The atmosphere of a home shaped by faith and integrity often feels different. There is stability even in uncertainty. There is resilience in crisis. Children raised under consistent declarations of faith often develop a sense of security that shields them from destructive influences. However, covenant protection does not override free will. Choices still matter. Wisdom still matters. Recklessness invites consequences. Protection is not permission for carelessness. It is covering for those who walk with awareness, just as a shelter protects from rain, but requires stepping inside. Covenant protection invites intentional positioning. Prayer strengthens consciousness of that covenant. When someone declares trust, they reaffirm alignment. When they speak gratitude, they acknowledge covering. When they resist fear, they reinforce confidence. These practices do not create the covenant, they activate awareness of it. Awareness shapes experience. Divine protection can also manifest as correction. Sometimes preservation requires discipline. Being stopped from destructive behavior is protection. Being confronted about hidden compromise is protection. Being redirected from harmful relationships is protection. Not all forms of protection feel comfortable in the moment, but they preserve long-term well-being. Understanding protection as covenant transforms perspective during adversity. Instead of assuming abandonment, a person anchored in covenant assumes purpose. They trust that limits exist even when pressure feels intense. They believe that nothing can cross boundaries without permission. This trust stabilizes the heart. There are countless dangers in life, seen and unseen, physical and spiritual. Yet covenant protection establishes that no force operates independently of divine oversight. Nothing surprises God. Nothing outruns his authority. Even when difficulty arises, it passes through boundaries already defined. Living under covenant, protection encourages gratitude rather than anxiety. It cultivates peace rather than panic. It fosters strength rather than surrender. It reminds the heart that covering is not random and safety is not accidental. It affirms that preservation flows from promise, that guidance flows from relationship, and that boundaries around destiny are established by a faithful God whose commitment does not fluctuate with circumstances. If this word stirred your spirit, bless someone else by sharing it right now. And if you're on YouTube or any platform watching this, please hit that like button to spread the anointing. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what God is doing next. And drop a comment below. I am ready, Lord. Yes to the huge move. Let your amen echo in the comments. Your faith declaration releases power. God bless you richly. Go in his peace, his power, and his promise. The best is yet to come. Hallelujah. Your brother Quaim from Ghana.